What do you know? Too warm to wear the jacket today. Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old, and today I'm talking about the 7th album from Orbital, the Blue Album. So then, this was supposedly going to be the end of Orbital's career. Orbital calling it quits forever after this. Even though this wasn't actually the end of their story. But in a lot of ways, it may as well have been. Even though Wonky is technically their most recent album, I still always think of the Blue Album as their swan song. It just always kind of felt like it was their album created to say goodbye. I mean, in the nostalgia department, the Blue Album has the major advantage of having been the first CD I ever bought with my own money, the summer before going into middle school. I played the shit out of this CD so much as a kid that it no longer plays. I mean, that's why I use my iPod all the time, obviously, but still. Nostalgia factor is very, very strong with this one. That being said, recently I've started to notice I have my problems with it. As I said, this album has always felt like Orbital's swan song to me, even though it wasn't. And I think that's because this album feels like Orbital reacting to the Altogether flopping by taking all the ideas they still had left in them, fleshing them out into fully realized songs, and then just throwing them out there without regards to how the album fit together as a whole. They basically just said, we're not needed anymore, so here's all the songs we have left. Goodbye. Now, the Altogether was a mess too, but as I mentioned, it was very much a mess on purpose and had a lot of weird coincidences, or maybe Easter eggs, in regards to its layout. The Blue Album doesn't really work that way. Anytime I tried to put together a consistent pattern with this album, it never really came together. There was always a track or two that didn't fit. On top of that, it almost felt like they had a consistent mood going for this album with the first 6 tracks on here, but they gave up in the last third. Most of the album feels kinda spacey and moody and kinda dark, but still melodic and quirky and rave-focused. Like you could take Aidenance from Insides and stick it in here, and it fit pretty well. But, why don't we just go down track by track? Like, it starts out with Transient. This track is weird and creepy, a lot of these quirky, acidy sound effects and bleeps and bloops, later accompanied by a string section. It's a very strange song, but it's beautiful at the same time. Love it. And then there's Pants, which takes things back into the typical dance rave territory and has a lot of catchy melodies floating around, but still accompanied by these moody and sad synth pads. It all kind of comes together really well too, and is a really fun track overall, but also kind of atmospheric at the same time. My favorite part of the track, though, is probably the most ravey section where the melody gets really intense and wavering, like but moments like these are contrasted by, say, the ending, which is very ambient, almost a tiny bit unnerving. Still, really fantastic track there. Tunnel Vision, meanwhile, is another one of the most intense tracks Orbital have ever made. It kinda has a mysterious vibe at the beginning with the subtle melodies and effects, but it soon starts up this really intense and almost industrial influenced beat. Really like the kind of track you could imagine as some kind of car chase scene in a James Bond movie. Synths that screech and imitate movie soundtrack string sections, a thick layer of little acid house squirting. It is really just an amazing sounding track. I actually bought this one on iTunes really early on. I believe it was the 3rd song I ever bought on iTunes, and my brother and I really jammed out to this one all the time. And there's Lost, which is kind of like Dwarbuder Part 2. It's got these creepy, bassy, atmospheric synth pads coming in the beginning, with some other haunting and ghostly melodies floating in and out as the song goes on, as well as this slow, plodding beat that makes it even more of a soundtracky kind of track than Dwarbuder was. Whether it's better, I don't know. I think they're different enough so that I don't really feel the need to compare them that way. But still, awesome track. And then there's You Lot, which is one of the singles. Definitely one of the most interesting tracks on here. Starts out sounding rather lighthearted with this intense beat and all these quirky little upbeat, happy acid house melodies, switching up its settings every few measures. Then suddenly the beat just completely disappears and we get this really moody progression of synth pads that played the same melodies before. It's suddenly very dour and serious, and we get this sample of some guy ranting about how far science has come or something. I don't know. This guy, by the way, used to scare the hell out of me as a little kid. Most notably because of when this guy says, "You're cultivating bacteria strong enough to kill every living thing." He then said, "You think you're ready for that much power?" And I said, no, I'm not. Then I started to think that the guy was like just some guy who was ranting against the progress of science because it goes against Christian values. And lines like, "Cheeky bastards," which made him significantly less scary. Plus, I found out that he came from some movie called The Second Coming, in which the sampled character actually plays the Son of God, apparently. Ooh. Okay, then. Point is, that sample is just kind of part of the fun now, and You Lot just goes on to become one of the catchiest and most fun songs on this album that I'm kind of disappointed they don't try doing live more often. Then there's Bath Time. This one, I believe, I bought like right after Tunnel Vision. Like it was one of those tracks that I bought on iTunes really early on. Me and my brother really got into this one too. Now, I've heard some people say that this track was like if Orbital tried writing a theme song for Sesame Street or something. I won't deny the very silly and childish melody at the beginning gives off that vibe at first, but this track also has some really creepy undertones as well. There's some choirs in here and some really creepy sections of this track where the main melody goes away entirely and just leaves the bass pads and low choirs. I think this track is kind of like the equal but opposite companion to Shadows from the Altogether. That song had creepy melodies and kind of creepy instrumentation, but wasn't actually that creepy at all. This one's kind of the opposite. Like, the melody's really happy and carefree, but they're definitely trying to craft a creepy atmosphere around it. Plus, the melody itself is awesome, and I will have nobody convince me otherwise. But as I said, after this track, the album kind of throws out having any consistent themes or feel. Acid Pants is basically like part 2 of Tension from the previous album, featuring vocals from Sparks repeatedly saying, "When the left track starts, then the fun starts." And it goes on to evolve into all sorts of weird and crazy digressions, and it's absolute insanity. There's not really a melody on this one, just random notes that seem to play random patterns over and over. That you can just keep changing synth settings, and there's a part where the Sparks vocals just make some stutter loop. When the left. The previous tracks were fairly melodic and had some darker atmosphere. This track's not so much dark as it is completely off the wall. Probably wouldn't have been out of place on the Altogether. I mean, there's a sample of some evil laughing in one part that I suppose could make this track creepy, but that's about all I can make of it in the concept of the album. And if creepy is the overall feel that this album is going for, then the last 2 tracks make even less sense. Easy Serve is this super chill and laid-back track with these super happy and uplifting xylophone melodies, and there's not a single hint of creepiness or darkness in there at all. It's like floating up in the clouds, and the clouds are made out of soft serve ice cream or something. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really like the track. I mean, it is still pretty simplistic and really doesn't have much to it. Yeah, this was another one of those areas that I kept tripping over when trying to think of an overall theme that tied this album together. And the closer, One Perfect Sunrise, another song that has absolutely nothing remotely creepy or dark involved. Hell, it's kind of their attempt to recapture the magic of Halcyon again. While they aren't quite successful in that endeavor, they come very, very close. The vocals come from Lisa Gerrard from Dead Can Dance and make for a worthy replacement to Kirsty Hawkshot. And the song is just absolutely stunning. It moves at a fairly fast pace at first, has a section where they just have some fun with some of the acid house bass. But then have a completely ambient section in the middle that just has the synth pads and synth choirs and Lisa Gerrard's vocals, and it's all absolutely beautiful. If I was a regular fan that heard their albums in order and thought this would be the last Orbital song I'd ever get to hear, I could be satisfied with this. Really going out on a high note, and probably my favorite track on the album. By the way, I'm reminded of an extremely corny Orbital joke that I thought up when I was a kid. Wanna hear it? Okay. Hey dude, I just saw a girl with the sun in her head. Wow, really? I guess that means we'll have one perfect sunrise. I was a weird middle schooler. Now for how the album fares as a whole. I think I've made it clear that this album doesn't really work as a full cohesive experience. One guy pointed out that this album does something similar to the Altogether, and that every song on here sounds different from any track that comes right before or after it. And while that's true, it also doesn't really have any set pattern like the Altogether did. Pants and Tunnel Vision are right next to each other, but those are some of their more up-tempo tracks. And Easy Serve and One Perfect Sunrise are right next to each other. They're really happy and kinda atmosphere heavy. And as I said, any attempt at an overarching theme kinda falls apart in the last third. I mean, Insides had the girl with the sun in her head, and that didn't really fit with the darker themes of the majority of that album, but that was bookended with Out There Somewhere Part 2, and I mean, it never felt out of place to me. I don't know. But it's really just nitpicking when I really get down to it. I don't often think about overarching themes when I listen to the Blue Album. I just usually think of like my middle school days or just immerse myself in the music. I think what's more important to the Blue Album is that A, the nostalgia factor is so ingrained in it, and B, every single one of these songs is great. Even Easy Serve and Acid Pants, which are fairly easy least favorite picks, don't remotely take away from the experience and are highly enjoyable in their own ways. So yeah, while the album is a little scattershot without much purpose, I think as a send-off to my favorite band of all time, I would have been perfectly happy with the way their career panned out. Even though, again, this turned out not to be their send-off, but we'll get to Wonky later. Blue Album may be one of their weaker albums overall, but that's not saying much, and I still think it's fantastic and absolutely worth your time. I'm overall feeling an 8.5 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.